The next day, John was there again with 2 of his disciples. When he saw Jesus passing by, he said, "Look, the Lamb of God." When the 2 disciples heard him say this, they followed Jesus. Turning around, Jesus saw them following and asked, "What do you want?" They said, "Rabbi, where are you staying?" "Come," he replied, "and you will see." So they went and saw where he was staying, and they spent that day with him. Over the past 2 to 3 years, I have found my head turned and my heart caught by the transformative glimpse of God I have experienced through Christian community. Like the 2 disciples, I have felt this glimpse feed a deeper curiosity, prompting me to follow and ultimately be invited to come and see. To this end, this 2023, I am embarking on a 6-month journey to dwell with various Christian communities. On the way, I'll be sharing interviews with community members, founders, and leaders to learn more about the blessings, challenges, and wisdom these dwelling places of God hold. In doing so, I hope to inform how it is we might nurture people and communities to be transformative manifestations of God, offering a glimpse of the divine and inviting people to come and see God's loving dwelling place.
So I'm Genny Tunbridge, and I've been living in Hodge Hill for getting on for 9 years now, which is the longest that I've ever lived in one place. And I live in one of the 2 community houses that are connected with Hodge Hill Church, and I'm what's known as one of the anchor residents in one of the houses. So we have a variety of people over the years who've come and stayed for a year or 2 or 3, but we felt it's important to have some stability and people who are there for longer as well. So I initially committed for 2 years, but as I say, now I've been there getting on for 9. So yes.
And so there are these 2 community houses which are linked to Hodge Hill Church, which is a partnership between Church of England Church and United Reform. But the community is linked to the Church of England side?
I suppose yes, in that it was partly funding left from the sale of the site on which an old Church of England building was that helped to fund and set up. But really, it's linked to Hodge Hill Church as a whole. But
would you mind summarising the rhythms of the community? Because in my stay, I've picked up that there are rhythms of prayer, rhythms of community activity. So would you mind perhaps summarising? Ambulance. Summarising like a week in the community and the rhythms.
So we have the 2 houses which have currently 2 residents in each, and so one of the things that happens is that the residents are committed to getting together once a week for a meal together, which usually happens on a Sunday evening, but with occasional variations.
Yeah, there are currently 4 of you in total.
Yes, so we alternate hosting that and sharing some of what's going on in our lives and supporting each other. So that's one important thing. Each house has a variety of different things happening. So in the house where I live, we host one of the early Sunday morning services and a midweek communion service. We host a kind of drop-in coffee morning on a Saturday. We have a kind of warm welcome space on a Wednesday after communion with soup, and then opportunity for people to come and hang out in the afternoon, do whatever they want to do. There are monthly patterns, so once a month we offer a breakfast after the early communion and someone leads a discussion on a psalm, so we call that psalm breakfast. Sometimes in-house people leading it, but also we've invited various local theologians and others to come along and lead things. So that's very popular. We get with the congregation is about 4 times as many when we have the breakfast and the discussion than it is when it's just straight communion. And then one of the other patterns we have, the houses are part of what we call common ground, which is a community that is consisting of both the residents in the houses, but also others who are members of the church, and who live in the local area, who choose to participate in a sense of intentional community as common ground. And the way that we've had to reshape it a little bit after the cause caused by COVID, but the way we're currently shaping that is a monthly gathering. So there's one coming up on Sunday lunchtime. We'll invite people to come to lunch at my house, bring and share lunch. There may be about 20-25 of us come to that, and then usually somebody after lunch leads a bit of a reflection discussion, a bit of sort of quiet reflective space, possibly combined with a practical activity. Last time we did it, we had a reflection on soil and soul, followed by getting active in the garden, cutting back the brambles that had threatening to take over the community house garden. So we do that once every 2 months. It's lunch at my house, and the other month the pattern is once every 2 months, a Friday evening down at the other community house, again with a meal. At the moment, I think we're just enjoying getting together for a meal. We might start building in some sort of study and reflection. That used to happen before COVID, but I think we're just for now still enjoying the fact of being able to be back together again. Because a lot of, I think, as everywhere, the pandemic pause, we lost an awful lot, and what was essential to our way of doing things and our identity as a community was very much about being crowded round a kitchen table or a dining room table, and exactly the sort of thing that we couldn't do even when it was safe to go back into churches and worship again, but at a safe distance. We took a long time to restart doing things in the community houses because that was the least safe thing to do. We did a certain amount in gardens and things to try and get back together.
Led to rhythms of outdoor prayer. So is it on a Monday morning and a Wednesday morning?
Thank you. Yes. With so many different bits and pieces of what we're doing. I've forgotten about that aspect. Yeah. So we were just planning to restart getting together to pray, because we try and spread that around different parts of the area, the estate, the parish. And we just agreed a pattern of morning prayer and breakfast at one community house on one day, and another day at mine, and one or two other locations. And then that was when the Omicron virus suddenly variants sprang up, and so we weren't allowed to meet indoors after all. But then we took advantage of that and said, well, let's just pray outdoors. So we've kept that up because we actually enjoy it. And the Monday one, they tend to go for quite long walks around various green spaces tucked in and around the houses on the estate. And the Wednesday one from my house, we go for a slow meander on the common, which is on my doorstep, Hodge Hill Common, which is partly where the name Common Ground comes from. And it's lovely, and just letting nature speak to us and kind of inform our prayers. And so those rhythms helped us sustain, and those prayers are open. So they're attended by some of the residents in different combinations, and those members of the church who are free at 9 o'clock on the morning. So sometimes it's just the clergy and some of the other retired people who can make it there. One of the challenges of a dispersed community life is how to find ways of praying together when everyone has very different timetables and commitments, as well as preferred styles of prayer and everything else. So, but at least what we've evolved and adapted an awful lot in the 9 years or so that the community's been in existence. The boundaries are often quite blurred, and sharp definitions are not easily had. And then we we have to, COVID has been one of several steps along the way when we've had to have a bit of a rethink and reshape the patterns. And so we had a meeting about 6 months ago now, calling together anyone who'd been involved in Common Ground in the past to think what did we value about how it was pre-COVID. What were the things we did? What do we like about them? What do we want to retain from that? What do we want to try and restart? Is there anything that we're happy to let go of? And how might we sort of reform things and begin again? And indeed, there were some things that we gained from the COVID experience that we were able to kind of add into the mix. The possibilities of something like Zoom to enable us to get together when it's physically hard to do so. That's sort of given some increased options. We have a little one of the programs we have in church called Fruitful Conversations, an open invitation to people to join a small group to reflect on different aspects of discipleship and to kind of do a self-audit, but in the company of each other. So the most recent one was on the theme of celebration and grieving, but there's other themes of learning and resting and playing, and a few others, but meeting every couple of months or so. But yes, we had a meeting, the sort of 4 or 5 of us who normally meet, and one member wasn't able to come, but managed to Zoom in so that we could still include her and have the conversation with her there. So we've gained a little bit in some ways, at least, from what we all learnt, the new skills we learnt from lockdown.
And going back to the residents.
Yes.
So you've been here for 9 years in other community houses, and you've seen a variety of people come through the doors. So unlike other communities, there isn't a kind of, some communities have relatively rigid start dates for people to join, and they have quite fixed rhythms. But my understanding is that people kind of come in and out.
Yes.
Would you mind describing some of the people who've been through the house in your time, and maybe some of their stories, or what the community enabled for them in their passage?
So when I first moved into the house, it was with Matt, who was a local lad, half my age, and was one of the people in the parish who'd had a vision about setting up community houses. So it was good to be part of living with him and helping to realise the vision that he'd had. So he was there for just under 2 years until he moved out to move in with his fiancée and go and get married. And then so it tends to be we have room for 3, but there were only 2 of us to start with in the house. So we decided to open up the 3rd room to host an asylum seeker, and that process started while Matt was still there, but we didn't kind of finish all the safeguarding checks and everything until after he'd gone, and until the next full-time resident moved in, called August. So August was with me for, again, about just under 2 years, but at the same time we had Bibi, who is a asylum seeker from the DRC, who was having her fresh claim for asylum prepared. So we were supporting Bibi while she was with us. And we've had 2 further asylum seekers, one from Albania called Ida, and Sarah from Eritrea. And all have finally, but only after about 25 years between them of waiting in limbo, all have finally got their leave to remain. So that's been a huge learning thing, I think, for those of us who weren't as aware of the system before then, to understanding and to trying to support them through their journey through the horrendous asylum process. But yeah, so we've had August was there for a couple of years. Al, the vicar, and his family lived with me for a couple of months while their house was undergoing various renovations and adaptations, which was lovely because they were there over Christmas, and I enjoyed having a Christmas morning with young children in the house. And then I've had a couple of people. There's some daughter of friends who was coming for a year to Birmingham to work with some Catholic missionaries on refugee projects and things, and got in touch because she was looking for accommodation. So I said, as it happens, there's a spare room at the old rectory, why not come and live here? So that was brilliant. And then currently hosting Catherine, who again got in touch with quite short notice, recently transitioned trans woman who had a vision to kind of set up a new project in the city centre in Birmingham to support trans people. And so she's been with me 6 months, and just yesterday had the launch of her project. So that's very exciting, and it went very well. She was very pleased of, and she was just saying how she was grateful for the existence of and support of somewhere like this community house, without which she wouldn't have had anywhere to live, or the kind of support and encouragement to carry on with her project. So I kind of feel there's a kind of vision of being places of prayer and hospitality, and that hospitality is taking many forms. But I do love the variety of people. We get quite a lot of students on placement as well, coming to see some of the community work that's going on more widely on the local estate, or who are interested in the community houses, or a variety of people. So usually we've got room between one or other of the houses to put someone up for a few weeks or a few days.
And from what I've observed, it's really been a community which has enabled other people, and there's a sense that that's made possible because the church owns the two houses.
That's right.
For example, Anna is a young adult who works full time, and
Yes.
therefore she pays more substantial rent.
Yes.
And other people donate more of their time
Yes.
to the community, which means that people can rent more affordably.
Yes. In fact, technically it's not rent because, as you say, the church owns the buildings anyway, and they're not charging us rent. We pay a contribution which goes towards running costs. So effectively, it's a contribution towards the bills. And I, as someone not in paid work, but with time to give, paying less but giving more of my time, and so that kind of balances out.
And we don't have time to dig into all the stories, but just over conversations, it's been really beautiful to hear how the community has been this place where people have come and it's enabled them to do their thing.
Yes.
So that's been really beautiful.
Yes.
And I was wondering, what has the community enabled for you, or what have the challenges and blessings been for you over your many years?
Yes. Well, I mean, I came here partly because I'm ordained and was working full time in a busy parish in the northeast, but then fell ill with chronic fatigue syndrome and couldn't carry on. Well, struggled to carry on and couldn't carry on. So had to find an alternative place to live and something to do with my life, because I wasn't ready to give up yet. But I couldn't. I didn't really have the energy to sustain full-time parish ministry. And after taking a sort of bit of a sabbatical rest, staying with a community of sisters, I discovered this project just as it's being set up. Found that it was going to be affordable rent-wise, which was an important first step, because I was worried about my small pension not stretching very far, but also hoped, and it has proved very much the case, hoped that there would be a role for me here, and it's worked very well indeed, because although there's quite a lot going on in the house, it's not every day all the time. So there are fallow days where I can and need to collapse and do very little, because there are other days sometimes when it's slightly too busy. But the general rhythm of things is manageable, and it's okay for me to get up late and have a kind of recuperative morning before rushing around making coffees for groups coming in, or making soup for a visiting group for lunch, or whatever it might be. And it's enabled me to rediscover. I love cooking, but when I was working full time, I was cooking for myself, but I didn't have much opportunity to cook for others. And now I'm really enjoying doing lots of baking, lots of cooking.
I've seen that.
Lots of
benefited from it.
Lots of hosting of community meals. Yes, you've been really enjoying the sweet potato pie. Excellent. I was wondering how we're ever going to get through all of that, but you've helped us a lot. No, that's great. No, it's really, really been a blessing there, and it's yes. I've always, even before I was ill, I've always been someone who wasn't rushing around madly, but preferred sort of sitting still and And now I kind of feel I'm sitting quietly in the house. People come and go. Yeah. I'm a bit of a reminder to the others that it's okay to slow down and take a breather and sit for a bit. Perhaps I'm a bit of a warning as to what happens if you don't slow down and the dangers of burnout of people. And we've lots of people here who are great activists doing an awful lot of good in and around the community, but there's a sort of reminder that we need to breathe. And yes, one of the other joys for me has been, because where the house is right on the edge of a little patch of common, Hodge Hill Common, and in just walking to the bus stop and going for little walks around the area, I've got to know the common very well, particularly got to love the trees, paying more attention to them because they're slow, like me, and they're rooted in one spot, like me now, and I can take photos of them without them flying away like birds do. So I've really got into trees in a big way, and I'm doing some studying about trees now.
I've been writing some reflections.
Writing reflections about them for church, kind of linking trees and spirituality and some of the interesting new scientific discoveries that actually tap into what Indigenous wisdom has known for a long time about trees and forests and nature. So that's been a real blessing as well, just having the time, because that was a childhood passion of mine that again got pushed to the side a bit, and along with art and creativity. Almost all the enjoyable things in life got pushed out by working too hard. So this time and being able to be in this house for this time has enabled many of those kind of passions and gifts to re-emerge and find expression within the life of the church and the community.
Yeah, and as we touched upon, the community has enabled people to step out of the 9-to-5 rat race of life, and because the church owns the building, it has enabled people like yourself or Catherine to come and do their thing.
Yes, absolutely.
Which doesn't fit into the very rigid mould.
Yes, I know. It's a nightmare when I have to fill in any kind of forms because I don't kind of fit any of the boxes. And it's kind of, do you own your house? Are you renting? Strictly neither of those. Are you living with family? No, they don't have for a box. It's just a church-owned community house for which I pay a sort of subsistence level contribution. No, well... But that's fine. I don't mind being outside the box, really.
And what's been more, touching on perhaps some of the challenges, either personal or the community?
I suppose the kind of worry or one of the challenges for the community is keeping the houses full enough to make them financially viable, because we do need enough people contributing something to help pay the bills, especially with energy costs going up. And there have been times when only one house was in operation and there was only me in it, and we're thinking, when is the next person going to turn up? And especially, obviously, hosting people like asylum seekers who we're not expecting to pay anything. So that's been a challenge, more for the treasurer directly than for me, but I'm aware of that concern. There's one of the other challenges for the community and the church is the relationship between the two. This idea of common ground as an intentional community, but in what way is that different from just being a member of the congregation?
And Al touched a bit on that.
Yes, and we've gone through various ways of trying to encourage participation, kind of marking it out with commissioning services, but that was viewed by some as being too exclusive, even though the offer was genuinely open to anyone. But some people don't choose to do that, and then see those who have chosen to do it as somehow might be self-perceiving as an elite group or something. So there's that danger that we work hard to try and avoid, and keep reiterating that the participation in anything labelled common ground is optional and open to anyone, and if you haven't been before, you're very welcome to come.
Not the residents, but the wider community.
Before COVID, we were sort of having an annual sort of come along to a lunch and commit yourself to a year of being part of it. We haven't explicitly done that yet since COVID, because we're really just sort of getting going again. We might do that again in January possibly.
And loosely, they're a group who commit to some kind of prayer and cohesiveness and action within the church.
That's it. It's committing to supporting each other, I think, to making their own. There's not a sort of common rule of life. There's a list of different areas of life, which is more or less the same as when we have our little fruitful connections, fruitful conversations group. There's areas to do with learning, prayer, action, social justice and peace, etc., and rest and play. I think putting in rest as well is an important element. Yes. So people are invited to kind of review where they're at themselves and perhaps commit themselves to taking something on in the coming year, dropping something in order to take something on. But yeah, just so what each person does individually is up to them. But the idea of Common Ground was partly as a group that would support each other in those kinds of
personal growth
and some of the discussions and things we would have would help people to reflect on that and facilitate that. But yes, it has been, again, it's varied and it's been quite loose in its definition, and we've adjusted things as we go along. So yes, just turning up to the lunches is kind of enough to be seen as part of Common Ground, and then how we interpret that. But yeah, the trying to pray together and trying to taking what opportunities we can to meet together. There is an awful lot of meeting during the week for various meals and prayer times or study and reflection and things going on. Not all of them has been under the label of Common Ground, but they're all part of that sense of there's a continually renewed open invitation to anyone in church to go beyond just meeting on a Sunday morning, but to engage in some or all of what's going on.
So that was part of one of the challenges, was balancing that.
Yeah.
And I have one final question, unless there were any other challenges which you felt like you wanted to share, which we can learn from, or any nuggets of wisdom which you would want to impart.
Oh gosh, my mind immediately goes blank at that point. I think just in terms of yes, one of the challenges of residential community life, there are inevitably things that irritate me about the people I'm sharing the house with, and I just have to remind myself that there are probably an equal number of things that irritate them about me, and also learning to try and not let the irritations build up, but to find gentle ways of saying, actually, it would really be helpful if, or actually, I find that a bit disturbing if. But it's yes, I think learning from some of the early experiences, I wasn't quite so good at that, learning to try and voice those feelings and not let resentments build up, but also that recognition that we're all we're all annoying in some ways to other people, and so that's, and we do have one of a sort of loosely attached member of the clergy team, married to one of the more firmly attached members of the clergy team, who's offered to and has in the past come and been a resource to help residents kind of talk through issues together.
As a regular thing, or just as...
it started off as a regular thing when we were first being formed.
How regular?
I think in the first year when we began, when there were 5 of us across the 2 houses, he was coming once a quarter to share our Sunday meal with us and just sort of see how things were going. And then that everything seemed to be going well, so that kind of faded out after a while. But then we called him back in when 2 of us in this house were struggling a bit with things and not quite knowing how to resolve it. So he came and had several sessions over. So it came once a week for a few weeks to help us talk things through and be kind of honest with each other. So that was really helpful. It was good to have that, knowing that there was a kind of slightly external person, but still known to us, who could help us with that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and my final question is, I've called the podcast Dwelling Place, based on the idea that God dwells richly in community. Yes. God dwells in many places, but God dwells, in community as well. And wondering whether you'd like to share where you have felt God in your life and community, or this community.
Oh, around the dining table when we've got a big group there, whether it's psalm breakfast or the community lunches or some of those gatherings, twinned with on my own out on the common, just standing among the trees. I mean, both of those have been really important parts of and that kind of moving between solitary and community of people. Yeah. I mean, among the trees, there's a community of trees as well. So, and God's very much in both of those spaces. So, yes, the crowd of people who enjoy the lunch together, and then many of them muck in and help wash up and tidy up, so that my by then exhausted legs can have a rest and know that people are taking care. Yeah. There's a real joy in that, and that's a real sense of God's presence in that, certainly. But yes, it's and I think God present in the seasonality of things, the ebbs and flows, the fact that there are busy times and just very sociable times and very quiet times in between, the fact that there's outdoor times and indoor times. That's also a bit, and living this rhythm of life now allows more appreciation of the season, of the actual seasons of, in terms of weather, outdoors, but also the seasonality of church life and of community life. So yes, I think in all of those things, God is very definitely abiding with us and in us. So, yeah.
Oh, thank you, Genny.
You're welcome.